Over the last decade as a photographer, I've used a lot of different focal lengths, but 35 is the one that I keep coming back to time after time. It's not the best at anything, but it's good at an incredible number of things. So if I'm packing for a trip or I'm leaving the house and I need to make sure that I absolutely have one focal length on me, 35 millimeters every single time. It doesn't do everything perfectly, but there are very few situations I find myself in where I feel completely stuck if I have it. So for me, 35 is a great focal length that sits in a very nice sweet spot. It's considered to be wide, but it's not too wide. It is still considered to be close to what human eye is going to see, but it's also not too focused in to where you're limited on what you can capture. You have the ability to capture an environment, but you also happen to be able to capture your subject in the same environment. And that's better for storytelling, because when you're telling a story, you don't just want to be able to focus in solely on the subject. You want to be able to show what they're doing. You want to give context to the viewer. And 35 is perfect for being able to do that. If you want to use a 35 for something like portrait photography, you can still do that because it's very natural and close to what your eye is going to see. So you're not really worried about having a lot of distortion. You can focus in on that subject. It's also still pretty good about being able to allow you to focus in on the details in a scene or an environment that you're in. It balances those two very well. You can put those into a photo collage or a photo set, and it's not going to be out of the eye's perspective that you would normally see, that a viewer will give it a second glance. See, with that 35, you can still create a level of intimacy, especially if you're photographing a person, because you can get close to that person and they still look somewhat natural, but then you back up from it a little bit and you can also tell the story of where that person's at or what they're doing by having the full environment encompassing them. It's not so wide that the environment swallows the subject. The subject just becomes part of the environment. And in some ways that allows you to have more brevity with your photos. Take one image and it can tell the same story as effectively as taking two photos with two different focal lengths, so you can get details and the entire environment. One of the things I love about 35 is that even though it's not a zoom, you do have an enormous amount of range with it. You can use this focal length for travel, street, environments, portraits. There's such a wide range of the genres that you can capture images using a 35 and just a 35 that you may not be able to do with other focal lengths and perspectives. And that's why it's such a great everyday lens, because there's not a whole lot of situations that you find yourself in where you just feel stuck because a 35 isn't going to be able to get you the shot that you want. Even if you're trying to do video, 35 does very well with that. Now, it's still going to be a little bit tight. It's not going to be as wide and useful as something like a 24, but if you only have one lens mounted to your camera and it's a prime, 35 is still very serviceable. And at the end of the day, whenever it comes to selecting the proper lens or the type of focal lengths, that's where I'm looking for. It's something that allows me to do the majority of what I want to do without having to change out focal lengths or perspectives. Now, I will acknowledge that a 35 isn't going to be great for every situation that I find myself in. There are a lot of types of photography I do where a 35 isn't going to work the best, so I have to use something else. There are limitations to this lens, and it's not going to be great for everything. Like I said, it's overall, but that doesn't mean it's perfect for every situation. You do have the ability to zoom with your feet, but there's many times whenever you don't want to get too close to a subject, or you just don't have the ability to get too close to a subject. Doing landscape photography, 35 can be serviceable, but it's also not the best option you have whenever it comes to trying to capture large landscapes or trying to capture landscapes that are very far off in the distance. If you want to have some type of separation or compression with your subject, you're not going to be able to do that very well using a 35. At the end of the day, if you're looking for everyday focal length, you do have to be aware that there are some compromises that need to be made. See, when I started out, I didn't say this was the perfect focal length, but I did say it's the best overall because it's predictable, it's versatile. It allows you to get the most out of a single focal length. It allows me to capture 90% of everything that I feel like is going to be presented to me while I'm out in the field. That other 10%, I just may need to be content with the fact that I might not be able to get that shot. I think that limitation at the end of the day makes me a better photographer because I have to be more resourceful with it. Not only does it allow me to become better and more resourceful, but I also focus in on what I can do and not so much on what I can't.